In order to save their lives from a devious death trap, Jonah Jameson and Peter Parker must work together to overcome a ghost from their past. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop into the pages of Amazing Spider-Man issue number 13 and find out for ourselves, shall we? Now, picking up from where the last story left off, Spider-Man was at the mercy of a villain claiming to be the Big Man, one of his oldest foes from back in the day, returned from the dead and now out for revenge. A pretty damn average day when you're Spider-Man, but this all cuts pretty deep for both Spidey and JJ, because you'll recall the original Big Man was a guy called Frederick Foswell, a crime reporter for the Bugle and maybe one of Jonah's only true friends. This guy used the leads he amassed as a journalist to start a criminal empire, even employing the enforcers back in the day. Even after the Big Man got out of jail, Jonah gave Foswell a second chance and a new job at the paper. In the end, Foswell would make an attempt to redeem himself, but it was only really in death, taking a bullet for JJ. So it wouldn't make sense to be Foswell himself, and indeed both our heroes and ourselves as the reader are surprised to find out that it's not the original Frederick Foswell, it's his son, Fred Foswell Jr. But why? Why did he take up his old father's mantle? Why is he trying to do this now? Well, the answer is truly tragic and truly heartbreaking. You see, Fred Jr. was just a kid when his dad died, and he never wanted to believe the truth about his dad, that he could have loved him, could have been a good parent while also being a criminal and hurting people at the same time. He thought it was all lies, something that Jonah actually fed into. In fact, at Fred Sr.'s funeral, Jonah Jameson famously said that he would make Spider-Man pay for what happened to his father and that he was the real threat and menace in this situation. Fred Jr. would take these words to heart and end up adopting Jonah as a kind of surrogate father, religiously following everything he wrote and said, especially the stuff demeaning Spider-Man. And now, as the Big Man, he's managed to put together this entire scenario so that Jonah can actually pull the trigger on Spider-Man, the man he claims has ruined his whole life. Obviously, Jonah refuses to do it now that he knows Spider-Man is Peter Parker, but worse over than that, he sees in Fred Jr. all of his sins as a journalist laid completely bare. He is a monster that he's created. In fact, next to the Scorpion, the Spider Slayers, and the Human Flies, Fred Jr. is just the newest and most twisted in a long line of criminals that Jonah helped create. It is, though, in these do-or-die situations, though, Jonah proves to thrive. He digs deep and says that if Fred Jr. wants to shoot someone, he might as well shoot him because, well, he's been reckless. He lied, he was self-aggrandizing, and he was selective with the truth. Having his hero rebuff him like this causes Fred Jr. to go into something of a spiral, which thankfully allows Spider-Man just enough time to get the gun off him and destroy the giant Big Man robot once and for all, a symbolic gesture that hopefully he's putting to rest a bunch of demons for the Foswell family. The day is saved, but Jonah doesn't feel good about any of this. Spider-Man agrees that Fred Jr. needs a hospital bed, not a prison cell. Moreover than that, Spider-Man actually attempts to pull Jonah out of his depression by saying that he is, at the end of the day, a complicated man. Yes, he often lets his ego get the best of him. Yes, he sometimes doesn't know how to drop things, but Pete has seen the good in him too. After all, here's a paper owner that took a chance on a kid with an important job when he needed it the most in his life. He's also stood up to gangsters, supervillains, and everything in between just because his code of honor said it was the right thing to do. Inspired by Spider-Man's words, Jonah decides to take his own advice and stand up to the Kingpin by throwing away the award that he was supposed to be given at the big ceremony. In fact, Jonah uses this opportunity to publicly own up to a bunch of stuff he's done wrong. He says that Fisk is a crook and a bad man and a bad mayor, but you know what? He was a bad mayor too, and he's also been a bad man. He put work before his family way too often, and he tried to ruin the life of a young man who was just trying to make the city a little better and a little safer. This is an admirable level of growth and self-understanding, and sadly that sort of thing is often not rewarded. Jonah ends up losing his time spot on the radio to a bunch of morning zoo crap because, well, wouldn't you know it, turns out his audience absolutely was only tuning in to hear him bash Spider-Man, but there is a silver lining to this cloud. He might be working with Nora Winters again soon. Now, as the comic winds down, we check back back on in with the Scorpion, he got screwed out of his payday by Arcade because, well, the plan ended up not happening. He does, however, end up getting snatched by Black Ant and Taskmaster. It would seem that someone is filling a prison with a bunch of old-timey Spider-Man villains, and it's not just him either. And it's on that note right there that the comic comes to a close, everybody. So that was The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 13, and I really have to say this might be the best Spider-Man story I've read in a very long time. And in truth, it wasn't even really that much about Spider-Man, it was more about Jonah. This comic marks a really important turning point in his character, and I think the next chapter of his actual evolution. Jonah comes out of this story a changed man, and we truly get to see how his new relationship with Spider-Man and Peter Parker is impacting his life for the better. We get to see a lot of sides of Jonah in this story, both as a man, a friend, and especially as a newsman who realizes that his words have power and can shape the world in ways he couldn't even imagine. A message that I think is very, very topical coming from Nick Spencer, a writer who loves to tackle things that are topical. Ultimately, I would feel comfortable giving this issue a 10 out of 10. We are going to be talking about this one for a very long time, I think, and everyone involved deserves a massive amount of credit.
Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel, and I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out some of this other comic content I have available for you. Then you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Cape Joel, so you're always up to speed on what I'm doing next. And hey, if you're in the market for some comic books for yourself, might I recommend buying your trades through my book depository link down in the description. Not only will you save a bundle by not having to pay anything for shipping or handling, but everything you buy via my link goes to support me and the channel. So you win, I win, everybody wins, right? And until next time, I will be back again with more comic content that smacks of greatness. Bye-bye, everybody.